As the sun dropped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, my heart pounded in anticipation. The 2-hour head start had begun, and every second was vital. The full moon was rising, casting a pale glow over the landscape, guiding my path and lending an eerie beauty to the snow-covered mountains and forests. My breath misted in the cold air as I set off, my pace determined but measured. I was a seasoned hunter and knew that a panic sprint would only exhaust me. Instead, I moved with purpose, my mind replaying the intricacies of my plan, the placement of traps, the route I had chosen. The terrain was challenging, a combination of dense forest, steep inclines, and slippery snowfields. My feet crunched through the snow, my breath rhythmic, my body a finely tuned machine. My path had been carefully plotted to make use of natural hiding spots and to guide the pursuing werewolves into my traps. During the first hour, I navigated through a narrow ravine, the walls closing in, the shadows deepening. The sense of isolation was profound, but my focus never wavered. I knew that this passage would slow the werewolves, funneling them into a more predictable path. As the second hour ticked by, I reached the high ridge, where the snow lay thick and untouched. Here I had planted one of my traps, a snare hidden beneath the snow, rigged to a weighty branch. I allowed myself a fleeting smile, imagining the surprise it would cause. My mind constantly scanned the terrain, remembering the landmarks, calculating distances, and anticipating the werewolves' strategies. The game was a complex dance, a battle of wits and endurance. Then, as the 2-hour mark passed, a chill ran down my spine. The haunting howls of the werewolves echoed through the mountains, a symphony of primal fury and excitement. The hunt had begun. My pace quickened, the adrenaline surging through my veins. I knew that those howls were not just a signal to me, but a communication among the pack. They werewolves were on the move, their senses sharp, their instincts honed. The moon was now high in the sky, its light reflecting off the snow, creating a surreal landscape. Shadows lengthened, trees became twisted shapes, and the very air seemed charged with anticipation. My mind was clear, my body in motion, and my spirit aligned with the primal nature of the chase. I was the prey, but I was not helpless. I had a plan, I had my skills, and I had the will to win. The game was truly on, and the night was filled with the promise of danger, strategy, and a battle for survival. The dance between hunter and hunted had commenced, and I knew that every decision, every step, and every breath mattered. The werewolves were coming, and the chase was only just beginning. The howls grew closer, and the distant sound of claws crunching against the frozen earth sent shivers down my spine. The werewolves were catching up, faster than I'd anticipated. I could sense their hunger, their excitement at the prospect of a new, challenging prey. I was no ordinary villager. They must have sensed that too. They split up, I realized, their howls coming from different directions. A strategy to encircle me, to toy with me, to enjoy the hunt. I had expected this. Werewolves are cunning, intelligent beings, and their alpha, Greyhold, was no exception. But I had my own cunning, my own traps, and my own determination. The first werewolf came at me from the right, lunging through the trees with incredible speed and agility. Its eyes glowed with savage delight, teeth bared in a ferocious snarl. I had prepared for this. A tripwire was hidden beneath the snow. As the creature pounced, I dodged to the side, and it crashed into the wire, tumbling into the pit I had dug earlier. The trap was sprung, and the werewolf's howl of surprise and frustration filled the night. 1 down. I continued my relentless pace, knowing that the others would be close behind. The second werewolf was more cautious, stalking me, its eyes fixed on me, waiting for the opportune moment. I could feel its gaze, the primal connection between hunter and hunted. It attacked as I navigated a treacherous slope, its timing impeccable. But I had laid a snare here, and as I slipped to the side, the werewolf's paw was caught, the weighted branch pulling it off balance. I didn't wait to see it struggle. I knew that the trap would hold it long enough for me to gain some distance. 2 down. The third werewolf was the most cunning, waiting for me in ambush as I entered a narrow passage between towering rocks. It leapt from above, a blur of fur and muscle, but I had anticipated this too. A network of thin wires was rigged across the passage, and as the werewolf descended, it became entangled. I looked into its eyes, seeing the intelligence, the frustration, and something akin to respect. We were adversaries in a deadly game, but there was an understanding, a connection. I left it there, trapped but alive. 3 down. With the traps behind me, I felt a growing unease as the terrain began to change. The snow gave way to patches of jagged rocks, and ahead I could make out the ominous shadow of a deep ravine. The full moon cast a pale glow over the icy water far below. My breath formed clouds in the freezing air as I calculated my next move. The werewolves were closing in, their howls echoing in the night, filled with bloodlust and anticipation. They had learned from their fallen brethren, and they would not be easily fooled. I was running out of traps, but not out of wits or strength. I reached the ravine's edge, my heart pounding in my chest, my legs protesting the relentless pace. Behind me, I could hear the rapid approach of the werewolves, their snarls growing louder, their excitement palpable. I made a snap decision and veered to the left, skirting the edge of the ravine, my footsteps sure and precise. 2 of the werewolves followed suit, their eyes fixed on me, their movements matching mine. They were relentless, driven, and they sensed my vulnerability. But they underestimated my resolve. I reached a narrow part of the ravine where a precarious ledge offered a treacherous crossing. I took it without hesitation, my body a coil of controlled energy as I leaped from rock to rock, my mind focused, my instincts sharp. The first werewolf followed, its agility astonishing, its confidence unshaken. But it was not its terrain. It was not its game. As it leaped to the final rock, I turned and kicked it, my foot connecting with its snout, my timing perfect. The werewolf's eyes widened in shock, its balance lost, and it plummeted into the icy water below with a terrible splash. 4 down. The second werewolf was more cautious, its eyes darting between me and the treacherous path I had just traversed. It sensed the danger, the risk, but it was committed to the hunt, to the game. I beckoned it, my eyes locked with its, a challenge issued, a battle joined. It growled, a low, menacing sound, and then it too leapt across the rocks, its movements sure, its determination unwavering. But I was ready, my body poised, my mind clear. As it reached the final rock, I feinted to the left and then spun to the right, my hand connecting with its hind leg, my grip ironclad. A werewolf's momentum carried it forward, but I held on, twisting its leg, unbalancing it, and sending it tumbling into the ravine with a howl of rage and disbelief. 5 down. I stood on the edge of the ravine, my chest heaving, my body tingling with adrenaline. The remaining werewolves were more cautious now, more respectful. They would not underestimate me again. I turned and continued my run, the village still miles away, the night still filled with danger. The game was far from over, but I had proven myself a worthy player, and I would not be easily defeated. The next few miles were eerily quiet. Though I could hear the howls and the distant movement of the werewolves, they didn't attack. I was left in a state of heightened alertness, unsure if they were being overly cautious or merely wanting to take me down within view of the village. Either way, I knew I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I trekked on, the miles slipping away, each step bringing me closer to safety, yet never far from danger. Finally, I reached the fast, icy river rapids, a formidable barrier between me and my goal. There, in the middle of the old rickety bridge that spanned the rapids, stood one of the wolves. Its eyes were fixed on me, its body tense and ready, a silent challenge issued. The bridge was clearly unstable, its wooden planks weathered and worn, its ropes frayed and brittle. It was a trap, a gauntlet thrown, and I knew that crossing it would be no simple feat. But I also saw opportunity. With a determined glare, I moved forward, my footsteps sure, my mind racing. The wolf watched me, its eyes narrowing, its body coiled to strike. As I reached the bridge, I made my move. Leaping onto the first plank, I swung my leg out, connecting with one of the support ropes, my force and angle calculated to perfection. The rope snapped. The bridge shuddered, and the wolf's eyes widened in alarm. I didn't waste a second. Leaping back to the shore, I grabbed the remnants of the rope, using it to swing across the rapids, my body suspended over the churning water, my focus absolute. The wolf howled in fury and confusion, its footing lost, the bridge collapsing beneath it. It was swept away by the rapids, its body tossed and turned, its struggle futile. 6 down. I reached the other side, my grip on the rope firm, my landing precise. The cold wind whipped at my face, the full moon casting a ghostly glow over the landscape. But I felt a surge of triumph, a momentary victory in a night filled with peril. The remaining miles loomed ahead, the village still a distant beacon, the werewolves still a relentless threat. But I had proven myself once again, and I knew that I had the strength, the cunning, and the will to see this through. With a final glance at the river, I caught sight of Greyhold and another massive werewolf on the opposite bank, watching me with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Their eyes bore into mine, their expressions calm and confident, betraying no worry or haste. The river was too wide for them to jump, the water too rapid to swim, but they seemed unperturbed by the obstacle. Instead, they casually turned and began to make their way further down the river, undoubtedly intent on crossing at another bridge. Their calmness was a clear sign they didn't think I could escape them, even now. Despite my success in eluding them thus far, their arrogance was a chilling reminder that the hunt was far from over. I turned and continued my run, my body weary but unbroken, my spirit undaunted. The game was still afoot, and I was still in it, still fighting, still surviving. Having made my long journey from the rapids to the mountainside, the sky became darker, more foreboding. Thick clouds rolled in, occasionally blocking out the moon and casting deep shadows over the landscape. It added an extra layer of danger to what lay ahead. The path through the large ravine was treacherous, with jagged rocks and hidden crevices that could easily lead to a twisted ankle or worse. Every step had to be measured, every movement calculated. But I knew that, hidden within the dark corners and echoing chambers, lay one of my more daring traps. It was a cluster of explosive devices, filled with powder and crafted to create an ear-shattering cacophony. This was no lethal trap, but one designed to disorient, confuse, and perhaps buy me the precious moments I needed. The ominous clouds overhead seemed to add to the tension, a silent reminder of the dangers I faced, both from the elements and the relentless pursuers behind me. Behind me, I could hear the rapid approach of Greyhold and the other werewolf, their heavy footfalls echoing in the cold air. Their confident howls filled the night, resonating with the dark power of the moon. They were close, and they were relentless. Every fiber of my being told me to run faster, to escape this ravine before I get caught in my own trap. I sprinted, my breath ragged, my muscles screaming in protest. As I neared the exit, the sound of a distant explosion rang in my ears. The explosive trap had been triggered, the sound echoing through the ravine like 1,000 thunderclaps. I didn't dare look back, but knew the werewolves would be momentarily stunned. Chaos of noise would serve its purpose, if only for a short time. Ahead of me lay the narrow pass that contained my last and possibly most ingenious trap, embedded sharp spikes fashioned from silver. I had crafted them myself, each one sharpened to a razor's edge and positioned at varying heights and angles. So even a scratch from these hidden spikes could cause serious trouble, potentially weakening and slowing a werewolf's advance. The pass was a tight squeeze, just barely big enough to walk through as a human. I knew that for a werewolf, it would be an almost impossible task, but in their hubris and pursuit, they might not see the danger. I made my way through carefully, each step deliberate and cautious. The spikes were hidden beneath the snow, and one wrong move could lead to injury, even for me. The howls were getting louder now, closer, angrier. They were recovering from the disorientation of the explosion, and I knew they were hot on my trail. Just as I neared the end of the pass, a loud, furious roar filled the air, and I glanced back to see the larger werewolf charging at me, his eyes wild with rage and confusion. I could see his realization too late, as the silver spikes scratched and sliced his body, his howls of anger turning to ones of agony. He tried to stop, to pull back, but the momentum of his charge carried him forward, and he was trapped in the narrow pass, the silver spikes cutting deep into his flesh. I watched, a mixture of relief and horror, as the werewolf struggled, blood streaming from his wounds. The spikes had done their job, and the werewolf was seriously injured, his movements slowing as the silver's toxic effect began to take hold. The werewolf collapsed to the ground, unable to move with all the shards of silver lodged within him. His breathing was ragged, and his eyes, filled with confusion and pain, stared blankly at the sky. 7 down. Looking further back, I saw Greyhold, now in his human form, casually walking through the pass. His eyes met mine, and an arrogant smile spread across his face. He was confident, unperturbed by the loss of his packmate, knowing that he still had the upper hand. Greyhold's nonchalance sent a chill down my spine, reminding me that the game was far from over. His strength and cunning were legendary, and he would not be defeated easily. I turned away, my mind racing, and continued my journey. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but the finish line was in sight. As I reached the end of the pass, I looked up just as the dark clouds parted way from the moon, revealing the village bathed in its soft, silvery glow. The sight was a beacon of hope and a symbol of the safety that lay just within my grasp. But it also symbolized something more, the lives and hopes of all those who had suffered under the werewolves' cruel game. I knew that I could not falter now. Greyhold was still on my trail, his steps deliberate and sure, his mind undoubtedly filled with dark and twisted plans. The night was cold, and the wind howled through the trees, but my resolve was unbreakable. With each step, I drew closer to the village, to the end of this nightmarish hunt. But I also knew that Greyhold was not far behind, and the final confrontation was looming. I had to be ready, for the battle was not yet won, and the stakes had never been higher.